friends, nice to meet you again. Wish you health, long life, success, and happiness always. Okay, this time we will discuss again the world leader who is very influential in the world. Who is he?
Here he is, George Washington, born February 22, 1732 and died December 14, 1799. He was an American military officer, statesman, and founding father who served as the first President of the United States from 1789 to 1797. Appointed by the Continental Congress as commander of the Continental Army, Washington led the Patriots to victory in the American Revolutionary War and served as president of the 1787 Constitutional Convention, which created the United States Constitution and the American federal government. George Washington is referred to as his father of state, for his varied leadership in his country's founding days. In place of the first public office, George Washington served as official surveyor of Culpeper County, Virginia from 1749 to 1750. Subsequently, he received his first military training as well as command with the Virginia Regiment during the French and Indian Wars. He was later elected to the Virginia House of Burgesses and appointed as a delegate to the Continental Congress, where he was appointed General Commander of the Continental Army. With this title, he led American forces allied with France in the defeat and surrender of the British at the Siege of Yorktown during World War II. American Revolutionary War. He resigned from his commission after the Treaty of Paris was signed in 1783. Washington played an indispensable role in adopting and ratifying the United States Constitution, which was a successor to the original Constitution, the Articles of Confederation. He was then twice elected president by the Electoral College unanimously. As president, he implemented a strong and well-financed national government while remaining impartial in the fierce competition between cabinet members Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton. During the French Revolution, he proclaimed a policy of neutrality while agreeing to the Treaty of Jay. He set lasting precedents for the office of president, including the title Mr. President, and pronounced the oath of office upon the Bible. His farewell speech is widely regarded as a preeminent statement of republicanism. George Washington was also a slave thinker who had a complicated relationship with slavery. During his lifetime, he controlled a cumulative total of more than 577 slaves, who were forced to work on his farm and wherever he lived, including the presidential house in Philadelphia. As president, he signed legislation passed by Congress that protected and restricted slavery. His will said that one of his slaves, William Lee, should be released upon his death and that the other 123 slaves should work for his wife and be released upon his death. He freed them during his life to remove the incentive to hasten his death. He attempted to assimilate Native Americans into Anglo-American culture. However, he launched a military campaign against hostile Native American nations during the Revolutionary War and the Northwest Indian War. He was a member of the Anglican Church and Freemasons, and he urged broad religious freedom in his roles as general and president. After his death, he was praised by Henry Lighthorse Harry Lee as first in war, first in peace, and first in the hearts of his countrymen. 13. Washington has been immortalized by monuments, federal holidays, various media depictions, geographic locations, including the national capital, Washington state, postage, and currency, and many scholars and ordinary Americans rank him among the greatest U.S. presidents. In 1976, Washington was posthumously promoted to the rank of General of the United States Army, the highest rank in the United States Army. The Washington family was a wealthy farming family in Virginia who made their fortune through land speculation and tobacco cultivation. Washington's great-grandfather John Washington emigrated in 1656 from Sulgrave, Northamptonshire, England, to the English colony of Virginia, where he amassed 5,000 acres, 2,000 hectares, of land, including Little Hunting Creek on the Potomac River. George Washington was born on February 22, 1732, in Pope's Creek in Westmoreland County, in the British colony of Virginia, and was the first of 6 children of Augustine and Mary Ball Washington. His father was a justice of the peace and a prominent public figure who had 4 additional children from his first marriage to Jane Butler. The family moved to Little Hunting Creek in 1735. In 1738, they moved to Ferry Farm near Fredericksburg, Virginia on the Rappahannock River. When Augustine died in 1743, Washington inherited the Ferry Farm and 10 slaves. His half-brother Lawrence inherited Little Hunting Creek and named it Mount Vernon. Washington did not have the formal education his brothers received at Appleby Grammar School in England, but attended Lower Church School in Hartfield. He studied mathematics, trigonometry, and land surveying and became a gifted draftsman and mapmaker. In early adulthood, he wrote with considerable power and precision. However, his writing displays little wit or humor. In pursuit of admiration, status, and power, he tends to attribute his shortcomings and failures to the ineffectiveness of others. Washington frequently visited Mount Vernon and Belvoir, estates belonging to Lawrence's father-in-law, William Fairfax. Fairfax became Washington's patron and surrogate father, and Washington spent a month in 1748 with a team surveying Fairfax's Shenandoah Valley properties. The following year he received a surveyor's license from the College of William and Mary when he was 17 years old. Although Washington did not undergo a regular apprenticeship, Fairfax appointed him a surveyor of Culpeper County, Virginia, and he appeared in Culpeper County to take his oath of office July 20, 1749. He later familiarized himself with the frontier area, and although he resigned from the job in 1750, he continues to survey west of the Blue Ridge Mountains. By 1752 he had purchased nearly 1,500 acres, 600 hectares, in the valley and owned 2,315 acres, 937 hectares. In 1751, Washington made his only overseas trip when he accompanied Lawrence to Barbados, hoping the climate would cure his brother's tuberculosis. Washington caught smallpox during the trip, which immunized him and slightly injured his face. Lawrence died in 1752, and Washington rented Mount Vernon from his widow and he inherited it immediately after his death in 1761. Lawrence Washington's service as aide to the Virginia Militia General inspired his half-brother, George, to seek a commission. Virginia's Lieutenant Governor, Robert Dinwiddie, appointed George Washington as major and commander of one of the 4 militia districts. Britain and France competed for control of the Ohio Valley. While the British built forts along the Ohio River, the French did the same, build forts between the Ohio River and Lake Erie. In October 1753, Dinwiddie appointed Washington as special envoy. He had sent George to demand the French troops vacate the lands claimed by the British. Washington was also appointed to make peace with the Iroquois Confederacy, and to gather further intelligence on French forces. Washington met with Half-King Tanaquarison, and other Iroquois chieftains, at Logstown, and gathered information about the number and location of the French fortifications, as well as intelligence regarding individuals taken captive by the French. Washington was given the nickname Canodicorious, city destroyer or country eater, by Tannack Harrison. The nickname was previously given to his great-grandfather John Washington in the late 17th century by Susquehannock. Washington's convoy reached the Ohio River in November 1753, and was intercepted by a French patrol. The group was escorted to Fort Le Boeuf, where Washington was warmly received. He relayed the British request to vacate to the French commander Saint-Pierre, but the French refused to leave. Saint-Pierre gave Washington his official answer in a sealed envelope after a delay of several days, as well as additional winter food and clothing for his entourage's return to Virginia. Washington completed the critical mission in 77 days, in harsh winter conditions, reaching a measure of difference when its report was published in Virginia and in London. On January 6, 1759, Washington, at the age of 26, married Martha Dandridge Custis, the 27-year-old widow of wealthy estate owner Daniel Parke Custis. The wedding took place on Martha's estate. He was intelligent, friendly, and experienced in managing the estate, and the couple created a happy marriage. They raised John Parke Custis, Jackie, and Martha Parke Custis, Patsy, children from a previous marriage, and later children Jackie Eleanor Parke Custis, Nellie, and George Washington Parke Custis, Wash. A smallpox attack in Washington in 1751 is thought to have left him infertile, although the likelihood is equally that Martha may have sustained injuries during the birth of Patsy, her last child, making additional births impossible. The couple regretted not having children together. They moved to Mount Vernon, near Alexandria, where he lived a life as a tobacco and wheat grower and emerged as a political figure. The marriage gave Washington control of 1/3 of Martha's dowry on Custis' 18,000-acre, 7,300 hectares, estate, and he managed the remaining 2/3 for Martha's children. The estate also included 84 slaves. He became one of the richest men in Virginia, which increased his social status. At Washington's urging, Governor Lord Boudetort fulfilled Dinwiddie's 1754 promise of a gift of land to all volunteer militias during the French and Indian Wars. In late 1770, Washington inspected land in the Ohio and Great Kanawha territories, and he engaged surveyor William Crawford to divide it up. Crawford allocated 23,200 acres, 9,400 hectares, to Washington. Washington told the veterans that their land was hilly and unsuitable for farming, and he agreed to buy 20,147 acres, 8,153 hectares, leaving feeling that they had been conned. He also doubled the size of Mount Vernon to 6,500 acres, 2,600 hectares, and increased his slave population to over 100 in 1775. Washington was inaugurated on April 30, 1789, taking the oath of office at Federal Hall in New York City. The coaches were led by militia and marching bands and followed by statesmen and foreign dignitaries in the inaugural parade, with a crowd of 10,000. Chancellor Robert R. Livingston gave the oath, using a Bible provided by Mason, after which the militia fired a salute of 13 cannons. Washington read out a speech in the Senate chamber, asking that the Almighty who reigns over the universe, who presides over the Council of Nations and whose help can supply every human defect, sanctify the freedom and happiness of the people of the United States of America. Although he wanted to serve without pay, Congress insisted he accept it, then gave Washington $25,000 a year to pay for the presidency. Washington wrote to James Madison, "Since first of all things in our situation will serve to set a precedent, I sincerely hope that this precedent is set on the right principles." To that end, he prefers the title, Mr. More sublime names proposed by the Senate, including His Royal Highness and His Excellency the President. Its executive precedents include inaugural speeches, messages to Congress, and the cabinet form of the executive branch. In 1788, Washington rejected the suggestion of a prominent French abolitionist, Jacques Brisset, to establish an abolitionist society in Virginia, stating that although he supported the idea, the time was not yet right to address the issue. Historian Henry Wiensek, 2003, believes, based on statements appearing in the notebooks of his biographer David Humphreys, that Washington considered making a public statement by freeing his slaves on the eve of his presidency in 1789. Historian Philip D. Morgan, 2005, disagrees, believing that the statement was a personal expression of remorse for his inability to free his slaves. Other historians agree with Morgan that Washington was determined not to risk national unity over such a divisive issue as slavery. Washington has never responded to any of the anti-slavery petitions he received, and the topic was not mentioned in either his last speech to Congress or in his farewell address.
Well, that's a little story. Hopefully it will inspire, motivate, and of course add insight, and of course you will become smart. Keep up with the next story only at @DHE_Ray. Thank you very much for watching, and you guys have become donors for humanity. Bye bye.